Hi, my name is Keith Barrett, founder and legal counsel for Vesta Settlements. Today, we're going to discuss the requirement for disclosure of brokerage relationship. The reason why we're doing this video is there seems to be a little bit of confusion in the market about the purpose of the form that's used to make that disclosure, when it has to be signed, and who has to sign it. And we're going to start by talking about some overarching goals of the agency statutes in Virginia. One is consumer protection, and two is risk mitigation for real estate licensees. And when we look at this form in that light, it begins to make a lot more sense. So the statute in Virginia says that upon having a substantive conversation with an actual or prospective buyer or seller about a specific property or property, that the licensee is required to make a disclosure if that prospective buyer or seller is not represented by another licensee. Then a disclosure has to be made about who that licensee in fact represents in the deal. The purpose, again, consumer protection and risk mitigation. So let's think of an example here where that would come into play, and probably the most typical example would be an open house. So you are a listing agent, you are in an open house for a client of yours, and you're getting people coming in to look at the home. And some of those people will engage you, some will not. But if you begin to have a substantive conversation with someone about that specific property that you're listing, and it turns out that that individual is not represented by another broker, and of course you'd have to ask to find out, but if you do find out, you are required to disclose to that individual who you represent with respect to that property. And what we want to avoid here, in the absence of making that disclosure, is that that buyer or prospective buyer doesn't somehow think that you, as the licensee, who actually represent the seller, somehow also represent them. And that's where the consumer protection comes in, and at the same time, that's where the risk mitigation comes in for you. It protects you by being transparent about who you represent with respect to that property. You are mitigating your own risk to the general public. Where some of the confusion comes in, I think, is that brokers are having everybody in the deal sign this disclosure of brokerage relationship form, saying that the seller acknowledges that so-and-so represents them in the transaction, and the buyer acknowledges that this agent represents them in the transaction. And it's really just not the intent of the form. Now, is it a problem if everybody signs that? Probably not, but it's also not necessary, because if I'm a buyer and I'm having a conversation in some way, shape, or form with a listing agent, but I am represented by my own agent, the law kind of presumes that I know who represents me, so I don't need a disclosure about who that listing agent might represent. So we're really trying to protect the unrepresented prospective buyer or seller who might not otherwise realize who is representing who and who owes who what duties. So again, if you look at it in light of consumer protection and risk mitigation, it really clarifies what the use of that form is. If you have any questions about this or any other topics, as usual, you should feel free to contact us. You could visit our website at vestasettlements.com or give us a call at 703-288-3333. Thank you.